Something I've learned since attempting to get the D-View off the ground as this channel's main series is the importance of easy content. I've become quite fatigued of putting weeks of hard work into editing and script writing only to produce a video that the YouTube algorithm won't even blink twice at for daring to have a series name in its title, and for daring to be something more original than samey surface level appealing content. And as I've become more jaded with the reaction video and stream highlights savannah in which I currently munch grass and look out judgmentally at the rest of my herd, I've begun silently scanning the plains for easy content. Something I can easily pump out with little to no effort that will still get significantly more attention than the things I don't actually hate myself for doing. Originally, my research into what currently does well on this open mouth thumbnail infested platform led me to believe that the best video I could make right now would be something along the lines of Minecraft, but Ninja blows up my house? Alas, Ninja would not respond to any of my proposals to collaborate. Thus, I've had to fall back on something I already have my toes dipped into. In November of 2020, I made a video on what I believe to have been the 5 most important games of the 2010s. This video was effectively a video interpretation of one of the many Patreon exclusive listicles I've written up on my Patreon. It wasn't a direct translation or remake, it was more like a remix. Consider it the A Link Between Worlds to the original article's A Link to the Past. Today, I'm gonna do pretty much the same thing. If the success of Watch Mojo and the like are any indication, people love countdowns and lists. Hell, I like doing them in written form when it doesn't make me feel like just another of the uninteresting drones lapping up the riches at the top of a humongous internet video sharing platform, but I'd also really like to not starve, and thus I've been sapped of the ability to feel shame. And so I present to you the 5 most underrated games of all time. Though, I must confess, by clicking on this video, I'm afraid you've fallen for my trap card. I hope this doesn't perturb you too much, but despite what the title of this video may suggest, I am not actually a primordial being with omniscient video game playing capabilities. I have not played every game ever made, nor do I have any knowledge of the underratedness of all the future games that are yet to exist. A more appropriate title of this video would be the 5 games that Brad has played that he thinks are the most underrated, and though I have played a lot of different games in my life and do think my opinion holds some merit, I've still deceived you. In my studies of YouTube's most popular content, I discovered that honesty is not conducive to success, and so I regret to inform you that much like many of the other drooling apes on this platform, you've just been clickbaited. I'm sorry, but now that you're here, you might as well stick around for the rest of the video and give me money. Underratedness is in itself an underrated topic, if you ask me. Why are we so wont to talk about disappointment and overratedness when the beautiful miracle that is a pleasant surprise is right there? Almost nothing beats underratedness, and I very much enjoy saying things that no one has said before, like microwave space rabbit washer, or I am proud of you, Brad, which I say in first person only sometimes inside my head to give myself a little comfort. So I am going to greatly enjoy lavishing praise on 5 really excellent games that I find little to no discussion about in the incredibly sexy and funny and intelligent circles I frequent. I'd love to tell you that these were hard to pinpoint, but as a real life underrated gem myself, Unappreciated Genius sticks out to me like a sore thumb. I am going to attempt to say, for the first time ever, that the following 5 games are actually really, really good. If you want a good demonstration of Viva Pinata Trouble in Paradise's underratedness, then look no further at just how hard it was to find high quality footage of the game anywhere online. Thanks, Stumped. I very much enjoyed the original Viva Pinata. It was one of the very few Xbox 360 exclusives that looked interesting and different and really enticed me. Then, its sequel came along in 2008 and expanded upon it in almost all the appropriate ways a sequel should. The core loop of improving and decorating your garden to attract new, rarer species of pinata and then making suitable living conditions for them was not only refined, but also, as I say, expanded upon, with the player now able to visit Arctic and desert biomes to meet new and hilariously charming species of regional pinata. There is a pinata in this game's Arctic biome with the name Flapyak. I rest my case. In terms of presentation, the Viva Pinata games are gorgeous. Grant Kirkhope cooks up a deliciously elegant, Disney-like soundtrack with a side order of Rub My Tummy and Tell Me Stories Until I Fall Asleep. A surprisingly mature collection of orchestral music, considering that it comes from the guy behind Banjo-Kazooie's soundtrack, which, let's be honest, sounds like farts a lot of the time. Can we agree on that? Sounds like farts? Yeah, go on, shake my hand. Sounds like farts. Graphically, I feel these games were very ahead of their time, and they honestly still hold up and look great today. Granted, given the world's current circumstances, my downstairs bathroom looks pretty great today, and that shit hasn't been cleaned in weeks. Alas, much like my unclean toilet, Viva Pinata Trouble in Paradise is just dripping with English charm. It's one of Rare's most forgotten and underappreciated works, and while I'm not saying that BoJack Horseman ripped off this game for ideas, I am saying that if Hudson Horstachio doesn't have his own Netflix special within the next 3 or so years, then the Americans are truly privileged. From Rare to the reforged remnants of Rare in the form of Platonic, Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair is a hugely improved and much more focused sequel to the original Yooka-Laylee, which I frankly consider one of the most disappointing games I've ever played. Now, you may question how I can put a game that released in 2019 on a most underrated games of all time list already. Don't we need more time to assess the underratedness of this game? But to that, I would direct you back to the beginning of this video. I need easy content, and thus my relationship has ended with hard work and integrity, and now the YouTube algorithm is my best friend. Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair is a 2D platformer, trimming a lot of the fat on its predecessor, and on top of being a terrifyingly tight and preposterously precise 2D platformer, it also lets you use tonics, which change up the gameplay experience in huge ways. You can choose to make the game more challenging by giving enemies extra hit points, you can make tons of wacky changes to the game's visuals and all this other stuff, and on top of great core gameplay in the levels, Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair then goes the extra mile by having the best hub world since, I don't know, Mario Sunshine? It has this huge sprawling top-down Zelda-like overworld with genuinely good puzzles. I swear I've played so many Nintendo games that I'd forgotten what it's like to not have my intelligence insulted by every so-called puzzle in a game, but the Impossible Lair hits this perfect sweet spot of making puzzles that aren't needlessly obtuse, but are still satisfying to figure out on your own. These puzzles are often related to changing each of the game's 20 levels, which are represented by books in the overworld, into their alternate form. You pour water on one book to turn it from a not underwater level into an is underwater level. One level is on a wooden platform, you go in, complete the level like normal, and then make the platform swing and go back into the level while the platform is swinging, and the level is rerouted as a result. One book is on a red platform. When you hit a switch to raise that platform, the level it's attached to becomes a vertical version of the level with much more focus on climbing. I don't mean to exaggerate, but the first time I saw this one, I shrieked like a caveman discovering fire. And I'd be remiss to not again talk about the soundtrack. Fart King Grant Kirkhope is back alongside Jungle Jazz Jesus David Wise, and while they contribute some amazing tracks, a large majority of the soundtrack is actually helmed by an uncanny homunculus formed in the collision of their musical juices by the name of Matt Griffin. Griffin can attach his name to so many of the fantastic, sprightly, wise-ish, Kirkhopian tracks that play in this game, and yet, as of the making of this video, he doesn't even have half the Twitter followers I do. Matt Griffin, you might be the only man in the world more tragically underrated than me. If more time had passed and we could better quantify the scale of its underratedness, Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair could be higher on this list. It could even be number 1. But as it stands now, if you haven't played it by now, especially considering that it's on like every platform, then I think you're missing out. Bulletstorm was Doom before Doom got good again. Only perhaps more impressively, it was Doom before Doom got good again in 2011, when COD was absolutely still all the rage, and consequently my mum apparently fucked a lot of people. This game released only a few short months after Call of Duty Black Ops 1 and only a few before Modern Warfare 3, to give you an idea. So in this time of FPSs being so concerned with gritty realism and constantly taking themselves so seriously, it was refreshing to see an FPS that wasn't concerned with any of that stuff at all. Bulletstorm encouraged you to and rewarded you for killing enemies in the most nonsensical and creative ways possible. You can kick enemies into cacti to kill them in this game. It's stupid fun. I did it a lot. Bulletstorm embraced its over-the-top violence and crazy dumb weapons that did ridiculous stuff in a time where it felt like nothing else was. Gameplay came first, so meaningful stories and complex characters went out the window like most of the guys you kicked. Did I mention there's a lot of kicking in this game? Yeah, the kicking was lit, dude. I did it a lot. This game cared about gameplay above all else, and it was damn fun, and it's a shame that no one seems to remember it. I finished the campaign over the course of a few days and had a blast the whole time. If you're interested, you can play an up-resed version of Bulletstorm with enhanced graphics for current consoles like Switch and PC in the form of Bulletstorm Full Clip Edition. Just go in totally ready to turn your brain off and foam at the mouth. Though, since you're already here watching this incredibly generic video, I imagine you've become quite accustomed. Listen, I really tried to avoid putting this game in, okay? I just don't want to talk about Pokemon anymore. I get bugged about this series so much, and I just think I've done so much better and more interesting stuff on this site than the crap I was putting out in 2019. With this Pokemon resentment in mind, you might wonder why it is that I included new Pokemon Snap as an option on the poll for the May 2021 D-View. To which my answer is, such a video will make for a great vehicle for me to further complain about Pokemon fans, because I assure you, you've got the benign version here. They may not know it yet, but everyone who voted for new Pokemon Snap on that poll has done so at their own peril. That being said, I really can't deny these games. I'm aware that Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Sky came out about a year later in 2009 and essentially serves as an enhanced version of these games and is almost universally adored by fans. Sadly, I did not play this version, but we can all pretty reasonably ascertain that all these games are very similar. Despite being universally adored by fans, however, Explorers of Sky was given a pretty shocking 4.9 out of 10 by IGN and has an overall critic score of 54 out of 100 on Metacritic. Explorers of Time and Darkness fare better, but not much better, having received a 6.5 out of 10 from IGN, standing at 60 out of 100 critic score on Metacritic, and being given a 7 out of 10 by Eurogamer. Even a 7 out of 10, I think we can all agree, is too low. For reference, Paper Mario Sticker Star has a critic score of 75 out of 100 on Metacritic, and that game is objectively a piece of shit. The original Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games were, for my money, the best stories ever told in Pokemon games when they came out. When Explorers of Time and Darkness came out for the DS, they then became the new best stories ever told in Pokemon games, and by quite a shockingly wide margin. This game handles its narrative with a shocking amount of maturity and complexity for a Pokemon game. There is a twist involving a certain ghost-type Pokemon some way into the game that left me absolutely reeling as a child. I remember having to put my DS down in shock and seriously contemplate what was happening. Well over a decade later, these games in my mind still represent the best stories ever told in Pokemon. They are oozing with emotion and nuance. The soundtrack, just as evocative of nostalgia and wonderment as its predecessors. Almost everything about these games is a clear and natural evolution, of what came before them. The dungeon crawling RPG gameplay still as addictive and surprisingly deep as before. The world still as gorgeously portrayed through its art. Surprisingly deep would be a good way to sum up the experience as a whole. There's a shocking amount of content packed into these handheld spin-off games. You can get countless hours of enjoyment and heartache out of them, fun for the whole emotionally unstable family. Despite lukewarm at best critical reception, there's a reason those who have played these games remember them so fondly, and still talk about some of the story elements and characters today, while other more recent Pokemon games, main series and not, fade into the back of the memory after a short while. If you've got a DS or a 3DS or even an emulator, because Nintendo can get fucked, you owe it to yourself to make sure you experience these games. They still hold up very well today. But before you make that comment asking me to make a full-length video about these games, consider that doing so makes it 1,000 times more likely that it will never happen, because I want to hurt you specifically. Considering that I basically never even touched Gwent during my first playthrough of The Witcher 3, I was thoroughly impressed with how much Thronebreaker made me enjoy it. This is effectively a spin-off game set in the Witcher universe, though if you're worried about spoilers, you needn't be. Practically nothing is spoiled about the main games. Geralt himself only makes one very brief appearance alongside another character who's otherwise portrayed in the novels and Netflix series and never once depicted in the main series games. For these reasons, I also don't think you need to have played any of the Witcher games or have any knowledge of them to enjoy this game as its own thing. Thronebreaker is a game where you play as Abby from The Last of Us Part 2 and go around top-decking people in medieval solitaire. It's an entire story campaign wherein the combat is represented through Gwent, the fictional card game of the Witcher universe that I guess is kinda no longer fictional. It does a ton of interesting things with its card game mechanics. It effectively uses Gwent to frame large-scale battles time and time again, with the effects of cards and leadership abilities you and your enemies use all helping to strengthen the illusion that this game of cards is in fact an actual medieval battle and not just a pair of jumped-up Yu-Gi-Oh players at live-action roleplay. Beyond that, however, there's tons of interesting and usually optional puzzles strewn about Thronebreaker's large, open and gorgeously cel-shaded maps. These range from convoluted battle scenarios with various monsters to literal drinking contests between your party members. Thronebreaker is a game all about decisions, both in your deck building and how much optional content you're willing to engage with for extra cards and potential synergies, but also in the role-playing side of the game. I generally got a lot out of the story and characters. There were lots of fascinating decisions to make regarding your companions, who take the form of cards in your deck themselves, and sometimes you're going to have to make tough calls that will bring them to leave your party out of protest, or maybe you'll even be forced to banish them yourself. I had a lot of fun with Thronebreaker's story. There's a lot of twists and turns, some of which genuinely got my heart racing a little bit. One particular betrayal comes to mind, though I won't elaborate any further. Admittedly, not all choices are created equal. For every genuinely interesting decision Thronebreaker offers you, there's a comparatively uninteresting one. This game frequently commits something I consider to be a cardinal sin in any role-playing game, that being giving you a choice that is effectively, do you open the chest? Or do you ignore the chest? There's a lot of do you do this thing or do you ignore this thing choices, and I never like those kinds of choices in any kind of role-playing game, because even if the thing in the chest or the thing in the cave that you've been given the choice to explore or ignore is bad for you, at least it's content. At least it's something you get to engage with, you know? If you just ignore these things, then you don't get to see anything new and you're just kind of left wondering what it was for the rest of the game. One of my favourite choices in the game related to this dragon in Mahakam, a dwarven civilization. The dwarves and the dragon have had a friendly enough relationship for a while, under the agreement that the dragon won't harm any of the civilians so long as they pay it tributes every so often. However, the dwarves poison the food they give the dragon out of fear that it will break their deal, and thus, after you fight the dragon who's lashing out at a nearby village, you discover the truth and are given a decision. You can kill the dragon to stop it from torching the village, or let it go somewhere else and get some gold in return. This is an interesting decision between two outcomes, not do you pay attention to this thing or ignore it. Based on my decision, one of my companions actually left me. I only bring light to one of Thronebreaker's very few flaws where I haven't done so for other games on this list, because I'm more passionate about just how good it is than the others. This game actually reviewed very well across the board, and based on the critical reception of this and some of the other games on this list, you could argue that underrated is not a fitting word to use in the title of this video, as opposed to say underappreciated or overlooked. To that, I would say that my relationship with hard work and integrity has ended, and now the YouTube algorithm is my best friend. There is one final greedy European businessman shaped elephant in the room when discussing this game, however, and that's CD Projekt Red. Based on some of their recent business practices and related debacles, a lot of people have taken to understandably refusing to buy CD Projekt Red's games. I get this, but I also think it's not that simple. They're going to make ludicrous amounts of money whether you do or not. Your purchase is barely a drop in the ocean to them. And at the same time, whilst it may seem like you're sticking it to the douchebag executives by not buying their products, there's also a lot of developers who worked hard on these products and aren't guilty of the same things. There's a lot of good people who put genuine love and passion into games like Thronebreaker that are paying the price for their boss's collective greed by not having their work be fully appreciated. I'm not trying to tell you that attempting to boycott a billion-dollar company is good or bad. I think it's a noble goal, but also complicated and often ineffective. What you can do, and what I think is often far more effective, is publicly torpedo the shit out of these companies on the internet. So I'd like to say to the devs of CD Projekt Red, you made a great game in Thronebreaker, and I'm sorry it didn't get the attention it deserved. And to the bosses of CD Projekt Red, you're all a bunch of money-grubbing fuckboys, and you can eat my whole arse. Supposedly, Thronebreaker The Witcher Tales underwhelmed big time in sales. Could this be due to the clunky title or the kinda unorthodox premise? I don't know, but I'll say that by the time I got to the final battle, I was shocked at just how invested I was. This game's narrative and gameplay build to a stunning crescendo at the end, something of far higher quality than its subpar sales would suggest. I'll remind you again that you really don't need to know anything about or even really care about the Witcher series in any sense to be able to enjoy this. Doing so will give you a finer appreciation for a lot of the little details and Easter eggs, sure, but you can also just take it on its own as a good-ass card game and a good-ass RPG. So, what did you think? Did you like the video? Great, because there's like 1,000 of them like it already on this site. Woo! Living the dream, baby. Be sure to give me your thoughts in the comments, especially about how you thought the intro was too long or that you can't believe a game that you assume I've played wasn't on the list. As you can probably tell, Top 5 Fudj is a miserable, mean old miser, quite unlike the affable, albeit extremely chaotic Fudj of the D-View. That being said, he does still care about your opinions, I promise, and he'll get around to them as soon as he's finished reading War and Peace. As I mentioned earlier in the video, this video was largely, but not entirely, derived from a Patreon exclusive list on the same topic. You can view this list and all the others that you've missed by pledging £4 a month over at my Patreon. It'd be a great help if you did that, or even pledged more, but of course it's up to you, don't feel obligated. I believe I'm going to be making a small mini-series out of these lists that will span the next few months because I think they're too good to just leave them there, and while I did say in the November 2020 video that I didn't plan on tarnishing the exclusivity of those lists, my relationship with hard work and integrity has ended, and now the YouTube algorithm is my bet. I think I'll mark this series in a little playlist called FTA, which will stand for the algorithm. Yes, that's what it will stand for the algorithm. I'll see you again soon for some good old, unoriginal, uninspired, viewer-friendly content after the next D-View. Yeah, baby!